Well, good day. Good day and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. Thank you for joining us again. Let's talk about the image today, particularly photography and its role in Black culture, how it has served as a tool in helping us feel good about ourselves in the midst of a history of negativity in images from minstrel shows and all types of other negativity, blackface. Since its advent, since its beginning in 1840, Black photographers have used the art of photography as a role in social justice. Just recently, there was a exhibit at the Harlem State Office Building entitled, and my guest will correct me, Art and Resiliency. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about her role because she was a participant. She was a photographer. And talk about photography, what it has meant to her and what brought it to her, what brought her to it. Brenda Ricketts, photographer, activist. Welcome to Mental Health and You.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
You're very welcome. As I started the show, I wanted people to know that photography has always been a form of social justice, or always been a form since its advent in 1840, has always been a way of Black folks, of African Americans, to give their side of the story, to show dignity when we were living in a world where we weren't shown any dignity, where our humanity wasn't respected. And I talked about a show that you were recently in. And as this show airs, and as this show is taped, you're still in at the Harlem State Office Building. Can
Correct.
you give me some history about that and what brought you to the show and why?
Okay, what brought me to the show is the curator, Mr. Mills.
Okay.
He
Okay.
he is familiar with my work and that of Azim, my partner, and
Mm-hmm.
he requested photographers and artists to bring pieces to him for review. The pieces
Okay.
had to show resilience
Yes.
and and what's going on, as the song of Marvin Gaye said, what's
Yes.
going on, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that the same things keep happening.
Yes.
So I submitted three pieces, three photos, and they were accepted. um, the major photo that I submitted, the huge one, was of Pink Ribbon Tree. That's the title, and it shows a tree in San Juan, Puerto Rico, that has pink ribbons all over it. And the ribbons represent breast cancer victims and survivors. And I wanted to take that picture because when I passed it on the street, the
Mm-hmm.
ribbons looked like they were dancing and
Wow.
celebrating the fact that, yes, we may have breast cancer, but we're still here and we're dancing. Also, uh, the photo shows that people of color, women of
Yes.
color in particular,
Mm-hmm.
die more than from breast cancer than any other group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that it's so necessary for Black women to take care of themselves physically and to not ignore your bodily changes.
Absolutely. I think
Yes,
as Black women, we tend to always be the givers, the caregivers. always taking care
Exactly.
of somebody else, to the dismay, to the neglect of our own body and our own minds. And that's so important. That is so important. And I'm glad, that you were able to be a part of this show. What's the name of the show again? What was the name of the show?
Um,
Art and
resilient, Black
resilience.
resilience and
Black
resistance.
resilience. You know, one thing I wanted to mention in the monologue, but you inspired me in this dialogue, was that the first woman to ever use photography, the first Black woman to ever use photography to further her abolitionism, but further her activism, was Sojourner Truth.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mm.
Yes, indeed. She used photography in order to, she was an activist. She walked, she talked, she was down with the cause of abolitionists. She was down for the cause of freeing Black women. And she wanted people to see her as she really was. She wanted the people to see her as a Black woman. She was mighty and she was brave, and so when you mention that, and she was a survivor and a thriver.
Yes.
So the first Black woman ever to use photography to further their cause, to further their activities as an activist, was Sojourner Truth. So we as women, particularly women of color, we go a long way in the image, and using the image and using photography to further our causes. I want to also mention Frederick Douglass. There was no other human being, no other American at least, that was more photographed in the 19th century than Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
Back in the day, when it first began, he realized and recognized that photography was a form of activism. It was a form and a way for social change. Because even in the midst of everything that African Americans was going through, slavery, all types of other degrading forms, going further, I talked about the minstrel shows, blackface, all of these, just downgrading and just negative images. He wanted to make sure that we were seen as people of dignity. So he recognized early on that photography could be used in these methods, could be used in these ways to further the dignity of all of us, to uplift us. So thank you so much for being a part. Now, you as a photographer, I mean, did you have any training? I mean, where did your interest in photography come from?
I've always been interested in photography.
Okay.
Since I was about 12 years old, I was given
Mm-hmm.
a gift of a Brownie box camera.
Did you
And
say a Brownie box camera? That sounds like something my grandmother had back in the day.
yes,
Yes, indeed. Yes,
probably
indeed.
when you
Very
looked in
good
it,
camera.
everything was upside down.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
indeed.
And I took family pictures. I recorded my family. And
Yes.
I'm glad I did, because I have pictures of my great grandmother and my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother and everybody that has passed on. And as a photographer, I realized that not only do people tell us something, but the surroundings tell us something. I grew
Yes.
up in the South Bronx in a housing project. I took
Yes.
pictures of the project,
Yes,
the
indeed.
tree outside our window,
Yes.
the
Yes.
church up the street. Everything is a picture, and everything tells a story.
Yes,
And
indeed.
yes, and I've been an activist since I'm 17, and I'll be 74 in 2 weeks. So
Oh,
activism and taking pictures have been what I do. I'm on
well,
several
that's.
committees: political
Mm-hmm.
action committee, education committee, and second chance committee. And photography is involved in everything.
Absolutely. Well, as
Yes.
you said, Brenda, photography tells a story. It tells a
Yes.
story about
Our
our
story.
lives,
Right.
our story, the way we want to tell it, to counteract all the negative images that's out there. And I think that's so important going forward because it tells kids today that we are a people. We are a dignified people. It shows others and it shows ourselves, our humanity, and it's so powerful. It's such a powerful tool. As Gordon Parks said, it's your weapon of choice. His weapon of choice was photography. In photography, he can tell a story. He can tell it the way he wants to tell it. And that's what we do. That's what we do as artists. I remember back in the day when I first got into photography myself,
Mm-hmm.
I went to work for a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, Bill Miles.
Oh,
And from 369, I remember Harlem, all of those great documentaries that PBS showed back in the 90s or 80s, I believe. And I went to work for him. And at that time, I had just came out of taking a film course, a summer-long film course at NYU. And I fancied myself a filmmaker. And I went to work for him, interned for him. And he gave me this assignment with my little black and white, with my little point and shoot camera to go photograph 125th Street for a pending series he was doing, for a pending project he was working on. Photograph 125th Street from the east side to the west side, like
wow.
6 o'clock in the morning. And then when I did that, now I had family photographs coming up and everything. My father took pictures and my mother took pictures. And he wanted me to do it, as I said, in black and white. I had never photographed in black and white.
Oh,
So when I saw that image for the first time, when I took it back to this office, when I had it developed and took it back to, and we saw it, 125th Street, early in the morning on a Sunday, for the first time, I fell in love with the image myself. And that set my foot on a path that I've been on and off ever since. So I thought it was so important. I thought it was so necessary to do this subject, to do this topic, because, particularly in the times we live in, I think we need to see positive images of ourselves. We need to see positive images. So tell me some more about your love for photography. Tell me about, some of your influences that
oh,
guided your path
well,
along.
as part of the National Actor Network, I would sit in with the other photographers. They had a photography club a committee when I joined in the 90s. And
Brenda,
I would,
Brenda, Brenda, Brenda.
yeah,
Let's wait because that's something. We talk about the National Action Network. That's something near and dear to my heart. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a
okay.
PSA. And when we come back, y'all, we're going to be joined by another great photographer. Brenda, we're going to be joined by that very well. So let's take a pause for the cause, and we'll be back on the other side to talk about all of this and more.
Okay.
Photography. Thank you.
If you love them enough to do this, surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Well, welcome back to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. Thank you for joining me and my guests in this discussion about photography, the role it has played in our society for the upliftment of our people. What it has meant, it's been a tool. It's been a tool to show our humanity, particularly in a world that always did not show it. And to help me do this, along with someone who has joined us, a special guest, another special guest, is Brenda Ricketts. How are you?
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining us again. And I see you got a guest with us, a familiar guest. Azim Thomas, what's going on? Photographer, activist. How are you doing?
Okay. Well, thank you
Good.
for having me.
Well, thank you for being part of mental health and you. Um, Azim, before in the first half, we were talking about photography. We were talking about the upliftment it has meant, I should say, to our people, to our society, how it has been used as a weapon, how it has been used as a tool in the movement, in activism. Frederick Douglass, way back in the day, we talked about it, that he was the most photographed man in the 19th century because he recognized that photography can be used as a way to uplift the people, his people, our people, in the midst of a world that didn't always do it. Frederick Douglass. We talked about Sojourner Truth as being the first Black woman to use photography in her own activism. She made postcards as she went along the way, being an activist um, for the cause of abolition, for the cause of ending slavery, for the cause of upliftment. There was a Black woman. And so here we are all today. We stand on their shoulders as photographers, as activists. Tell me, Azim, with that in mind, what has photography meant to you?
Um, Photography gave me a way to express myself and how I see things. It gave me an inner view on
Mm,
um, how I can take positions in lighting, in movement, and put these things together to make people feel when I take a photograph, they can feel it because I took it with a certain spirit, you know.
mm-hmm.
And I have a thing that, I don't like to shoot stuff that I don't feel, because it's a spiritual thing for me. Okay. It's also a therapeutic thing for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, the last time I spoke to you, we spoke about, death and losing people and going through changes.
Yes.
Well, I've lost a lot of people in the COVID situation. And I
Mm-hmm.
thank God a lot of my family members had passed away, since the last time we met. And one of I lost my nephew, I lost my sister, I lost my cousin, I lost my niece, you know, and it allowed me to what you call it. It was like a therapy for me, you know, in
Yes.
order to to get me out of that bag, that depressive bag. You got to go on. You got
Understood.
to move on. You can't stay still. This is part of life. You got to make it. You got to do it. You got to, and that's what photography is so a part of me that I can't give it up. Every time I close my eyes, I see pictures. You know, I see pictures of Art Ward. That's how I met
Mm-hmm.
you. I met you at the
Mm-hmm.
National Action Network. We were in the
Right.
photography club together. I
We were
started
some of
back
the
in
founders. Yes, indeed. For
in
transparency,
19,
y'all.
yeah, 90, yeah,
Arzine, can I just add this?
yeah,
Arzine
yeah,
Thomas and I were founding members of the National Action Network Photo Club way back in the day.
right.
So that's how you and I met. That's like almost, I dare say, a long time ago when we both had black hair, when we both had more hair. Uh, but yes, so
You
photography,
carry, yeah, sister.
photography as yes. Go
Yeah,
ahead. I'm listening.
Sister Tim, you carry a powerful legacy that you very rarely talk about. There was a few of us in the National Action Network, and we were the photographers like Art Ward, yourself,
Hmm.
Mr. J. Johnson,
Yes.
and all these people that passed on. And we are very rare because, as I know it today, the National Action Network has never had another photography club since the last time we had it.
Well,
You know,
okay. Well, Be
And
that
that's
as
part
in
of
May,
history.
be that as in May, I want to talk
And
about the
then
activism part of. I want, but the activism, yes, there. For me, I've always wanted to be part of such a club. It was therapy, but it was also such an inspiration. I grew up loving the works of Austin Hanson and Gordon Parks,
mm-hmm.
and so many people, all the photographers of Harlem. Something that Vandersea,
Right.
Vandersea, all of these works. Who he was just as responsible for the Harlem Renaissance as anybody else because he brought everything to life. He brought everything to life. We saw the eloquence and the elegance of Harlemites in their furs, in their Sunday best, living in their homes. And it was such a counterpart. It was such a counterpart, and it was such a beautiful image to see a counterpart to all the other things that were going on in our lives, at that time, during that time. So when we think about photography as a tool to uplift us, when we think about photography as a tool to show our humanity, even in the midst of a world that did not always do it, it was an important role. Mr. Azim, how have you used photography as a weapon, not just for your own therapeutic means, which is important because this is mental health in you, but as an activist, how has what why use for your photography that way?
Okay.
What brought you to the movement as a photographer? What
Okay.
made you want to contribute this skill set?
Okay. It came out of a situation that I had when I didn't have no pictures of my father, you know.
Mm.
And they had took all the pictures that I had of my father, and I ain't had nothing to show my my children, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I went on this mission, never to let that happen again. And then I found my way into the National Action Network one day, 1996, going on 1997. I found myself in the National Action Network, the House of Justice, and it just took off. In 1999, I seen an exhibition, Gordon Parks,
Mm. Yeah.
half past autumn, down on
Mm-hmm.
at the city of New York, the Museum of the City of New York, and it blew my mind. And
Wow.
from that time to this time,
Yes.
I never let my camera down because I love documenting. You
Where
know,
can people
uh,
see your work? Azim, Brenda, where can people see
Yeah.
your work?
Okay, the exhibit we're in now
Yes.
runs September 17th, 18th, and 19th from 2 in the afternoon to 8 p.m.
Okay. Any
At
future works?
it's at the Harlem State Office Building, Adam Clayton Powell State Office Building.
Okay. And any future works in mind?
yes,
Anything?
I'm planning to work with Mr. Mills at the State Office Building because Black History Month is coming up, and I want to put something together pertaining to the Black History Month. So I'm working very close with Mr. Mills to give a show, and then also I'm also working on a book. And the title of the book is dealing with the history, some of the stuff that I did at the National Action Network on dealing with Al Sharpton, called Man in the Shadow.
Okay.
And that's documenting a lot of his work that I did back in 1996, going into 2003 when the National Action Network burned down. So
Interesting.
all of that's it's like Miss History, because some great people came up in the National Action Network. Minister Louis Farrakhan, brother
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, Johnny Cochran, you know, and a lot of powerful people were there. Even
Yep.
brother Sonny Abubadika Carson was up in that piece, you know. And I
I
want to bring
remember
all,
it well. I
yes,
remember it well. I mean, on those Saturdays when the rally was, it's almost like I was going to church. You know, I
yes,
couldn't wait to get. My goodness, I couldn't wait to get there, and it was an education to me.
yes.
It was like church to me. It was a family to me, and it allowed me, if I must say, to further learn that craft of photography, to further appreciate it more, to further have that opportunity to be upliftment in the form of photography. But I went on, I realized, like you, Azim, that was also therapy to me because when I photographed, I felt better. I felt like I had a voice. I felt I felt good about myself. I felt like I was leaving a legacy.
Yes.
And it was something special. And I had so many people to thank. I had so many people like yourself to thank, Mr. Ward, and so many others that I learned about in school. I talked about Bill Miles, the great documentary filmmaker that set me on this path of photography. But we also can't leave this program without also thanking Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and all those unnamed, unsung photographers back in the day who paved the way for us. Photography as a form of an upliftment. I want to thank you both for being part of this mental health and you, for being able to talk about it, because we got to do some more shows. We got to, and I want others to see your work.
Okay.
Your
Yeah.
contact is on the screen. So, absolutely. But photography as a form of an upliftment, photography as a form of righteousness, as a form of part of our legacy, since its very beginning, it's played a role. It can continue. It seems to me, Azine and Brenda, that we need it more than ever. We need to
Yes, we
show
do.
people and show our young people that we are a great people.
That's right.
We are a great, we have a
That's
great
right.
legacy.
Yeah,
We
great
have
history.
humanity. We have dignity. You know, there's greatness in us and all around us. We're talented. We're smart. We're eloquent. We're so much than what
We're
sometimes others
resilient.
want to portray. Indeed. But
Yes.
until that time, keep photographing.
Okay.
Find your passion, y'all. Look at a photograph differently. And until next time, for mental health and you, I wish you peace and blessings and good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
very much.